torture dungeon.
Yeah.
And he was like, am I not the spawn of depraved blood? And I just, we dwell on this history of this blasphemous chamber where limbs were twisted and eyes were gouged and flesh burned, breathing this infernal air. And this is the great, you have to just imagine Price doing this, absorbing the miasma of barbarity which permeates these walls.
Yeah. Oh my God. Both the dialogue he gets in both these films is fantastic. So much to chew on.
Yeah, like so he's talking about that while he's we're starting to see Elizabeth get possessed and want to go down there and actually maybe locking herself in the Iron Maiden and letting out these like blood curdling screams and all of this, which kind of made Steele one of the original Scream Queens in a way, which is then though leads right into the second flashback of his own childhood, which is I think what you were referring to, right?
Yeah.
Where like despite his being forbidden from his father's torture chamber, the curiosity that the same one that kind of infected his wife kind of drew him to the chamber, so he knew exactly what it was that kind of plagued her.
Yeah.
But his was a more traumatic relationship because he saw his father kill his uncle and mother in the chamber for having an affair. Yeah. And they basically say that, he used hellish instruments and I felt ice cold premonition. Something was wrong, like darkening vapor. And those just like crazy distortions as you get like the dad, Vincent Price, just like going nuts and axe murdering his brother.
Yeah.
And then like presumably torturing the mother to death, though we later find out that in a different flashback that he actually entombs her in the walls and buries her alive.
Right.
This is just another image we can't escape.
Which is also what sets him off to think that could have possibly happened with Elizabeth. And that causes
he's
him
haunted by this memory and its resemblance to his wife's death, obviously. Like, this is actually what's making him so filled with dread and guilt, right?
Yeah. There's this one part, I think, where he just starts screaming, like, true or something when he finds out that is indeed possibly what happened to Elizabeth. And then he feels guilty because he thinks, like, he thought she was dead, so he properly buried her. And I guess like the more I'm thinking about the full context of
getting
what we
doctors to check if people are dead.
Yeah, or at least get that bell going. I've seen that bell that they used to have in coffins just in case,
So many Edgar Allan Poe stories could have been solved by just like checking pulses, there's just
100%. And the thing about the full context of the movie too is like he really is a much more sympathetic character, because once we get the full thing of what's happening, he's really the one in this film being gaslit and driven to madness. And even though he does, and we'll get to all these details, he does become kind of the evil itself, it is because of a betrayal. And so, his character here has a little bit more. I don't know if it's more going on, but there's a little bit more dynamic to his character because he himself doesn't really even know what's happening. So he can kind of go in a bunch of different directions in that sense.
I agree, because I think that this film like has a lot of the same kind of like cheap economical visual imagination I liked about House of Usher. Like Corman, once again, the sort of like both decadent and decrepit kind of look of the production design, the occasionally just like insane psychedelic dreaminess and the kind of violent irony imagery, some of which obviously is just coming from Poe, but like I think he's still using to really great atmospheric effect and everything like that. But it is tied, I do agree, I think a little bit more effectively to because I do like what they do in House of Usher, and I think the poisoned house and the poisoned family tree, and I do like the ambiguity of like, is the brother just paranoid and kind of forcing this to happen, or is it actually some kind of supernatural curse? Like, I like all of that, but there's something so much more kind of, I think, intense, like in the moment intense about the subjective melodrama of the Price character in this film. I think it's because he just feels like more of the lead character. We feel like, he's the one who's kind of being put upon as the protagonist a little bit. And, honestly, the young, handsome guy who rolls up to the house is kind of like a little bit more of like a detective figure who rolls into the story.
Yeah, he has that determination. He's kind of like always yelling at Price, trying to get the next answer. And he's the one that's constantly, and he's more, the way he plays him too, John Kerr, it's a lot stronger than the previous lead, just because the way he plays him, like I said, there is that strong determination. He is just rifling through hallways looking for Elizabeth and screaming at whoever is in front of him to get answers. Like, he has a real strength to him, and I think it balances well, just in the sense we were talking about, like the energy that Price gives off compared to some of his counter stars. And I think Kerr holds his own in this one in that sense, for sure.
Yeah, well, and some of the, just putting them through the kind of ringer that we see Price go through psychologically when he is being haunted, when they hear, harp music throughout the castle, which they think might be the ghost of Elizabeth. And you just have Vincent Price being like, I know that music anywhere.
Yeah.
And
honestly, watching House of Usher first, and knowing that you see these similarities, and especially when you watch them back to back, you have this already this idea that Price's character saying these things is maybe gaslighting you again. Like, he's setting you up for another thing where he's the one that's pulling the strings, and it is
which the detective thinks briefly too, right? Like, it's this whole thing where it's like, was she interred prematurely like his mother was? And now roams the castle as like the spirit haunting them for this crime. Like Elizabeth's room is making noises, her portrait is vandalized, her rings are showing up in strange places.